Hello, welcome to Chats with Chelsea. Today we are starting a new conversation. We will be talking about contracts, what it means to be a social media influencer, and much more. Let's tune in. Real. We're talking all things contracts today, and we have an attorney that has been in Silicon Valley who graduated from Vanderbilt Law School. Chats with Chelsea community, help me in welcoming Stephanie Onyekwere to the show.
Hi.
Hi.
It was close.
It was close.
Definitely Onyekwere. It's okay.
I tried.
Great job.
Well, Stephanie, thank you for joining us. You are on the West Coast,
Yes.
and I'm just thrilled that we get to share your story with the Chats with Chelsea community today, and we get to educate, which I think is so key, and it's definitely a part of the mission of empowering women to live purposeful lives. So let's just get started. Why did you become an attorney?
Well, for me, I actually knew I wanted to be an attorney very early. It was probably around high school. I did a lot of legal, like legal classes, legal programs. And I think what interested me in law not only was because I was always a reader, but it was just something about the legal world where it felt like if you didn't have the knowledge in that area, you could oftentimes be taken advantage of. And so for me, it felt very empowering to get into this space, have this knowledge, and really be able to educate others. Because so many people, whether it's from a traffic stop or, a contract ticket, anything like that, there's just so much information out there, and the law can really have a big impact on your life. And a lot of people don't even know, much about it. And from coming from, I'm Nigerian, my family's from Nigeria. And so coming from a family of immigrants, so it was really important for me to, educate myself in that area. And I just, continue to happen to really enjoy it as my career and education went on.
So how did you end in Silicon Valley?
It was an odd journey for me because I could never figure out what I wanted to do in law. Like law, there's just like, some people go to law school and they just never even practice law. It's just kind of to, have the knowledge and do the business mindset.
Kind of me, a little bit.
Oh, yeah. Exactly. It's a good thing to do, but like it just can take you in so many places. And so for me, I really started getting interested in the kind of the more the contract transactional side of it, and the world of startups and technology. And I just kind of, by meeting different people, it just kind of happened where I literally did one summer out in the Bay Area, came there for my first time, and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna work in Silicon Valley. I'm gonna work in tech. So I came out here straight out of law school and started working in corporate law. And like I said, I did the transactional side. So that's, I'm not in the courtroom where it's like, corporate litigation can go in that way, but I'm more so, with the paperwork, doing the contracts, the drafting, and I specialized in IP and technology. So all things copyrights, trademarks, patents, and anything around that sort. Just learning with different companies how to build and protect their IP and technology.
So, with all these experiences and how you have been able to practice there in Silicon Valley, what made you decide that you wanted to start your own firm, your own gig, and utilize what you had learned there in the Valley to help influencers with their brand?
Well, it really started off. I came into this space. I kind of always had like a little spirit of entrepreneurial, in me, and I think that's kind of why I enjoyed being in Silicon Valley. But I definitely went into the legal field to help people and to make sure that I was, helping people that did not have the opportunities as I did to be able to go to law school, who have this knowledge. And so being in Silicon Valley, it's very, my first firm I was working with very large companies who, it didn't really feel very impactful. And then even moving to working with more startups, it was very white and it was very male dominated. And for me, I personally like working with women and women of color. And I started really getting into the influencer world. It's such an interesting, fun space because it is like influencers are like startups. They're businesses. They're making money. They're going through business transactions, except it seems like because it's in my opinion, because it's more women are in that industry, that a lot of companies and brands are, take advantage of the people working in that space. So for me, I felt like that I had the knowledge. This was exact opportunity was I was looking for. I have the knowledge. There are people out there who are really trying to build something for themselves, but they don't actually understand how to go about protecting themselves and operating as a business so that you can actually profit and have a successful business and actually, create something for yourself. So, yeah, that's why I kind of jumped in it. And I have a lot of influencers around me just from like friends, and, they would show me their agreements. And I was just, I was actually shocked that, so many agreements were going back and forth. And, even the companies, like, they didn't really know. They're kind of confused about what influencers are too. And so the influencers are like just kind of letting them, kind of take the lead. And when you do that, it's oftentimes not in your favor, because at the end of the day, each party is kind of looking, to benefit for themselves. So, I saw that as a space as people really needing help and support, even if they don't know it. It was my role to kind of give them the education and the information so that they are aware, that they do need some help and they do need some support.
So how long have you been out on your own?
I've just barely started on my own, so I'm new in the entrepreneurial world, kind of a month, 2 month officially out on my own now. So I've just been using the experience that I've had working with these larger companies and working with these smaller companies who oftentimes do use influencers and do use even just smaller companies generally to help them, be more efficient and, get things done that they don't necessarily is not their focus. Like everybody needs marketing, everybody needs advertising. And so, kind of using a third party to kind of help you with that source is, it's pretty typical and pretty normal. It's just with the influencer space, a lot of people don't realize that, like, that is a business opportunity. You are a business transaction, and you have to, ask for the money, ask for your rights, and demand it in that way, or else, you just kind of get walked over. So it's been an interesting journey, because it's a lot of teaching in this space. A lot of people don't even realize. They're just like, oh, I take great pictures, or, I really love, speaking on something, and they wanted to use my video, and they have no idea that is actually, that's work product, and you should be paid for it if somebody's using it.
So let's go to the basics as we dive into contracts.
Mm-hmm.
What is a contract? I'll be honest, in my notes, I wrote a K because that's what contracts equals in law school. And I
Exactly.
still do it today, 6 years later, more than 6 years later. Contract is a K. And one day my husband saw something. He was like, what is this K? Oh, that's the contract we have to read. It was like a lease or something. But tell us, what is a contract?
So a contract is, it's just it's a document where both parties come together and basically write out how they're going to be working together. So it's like a plan. It just lays out the foundation of what both parties' expectations, I should say. So we deal with contracts all the time, whether it's I know in the space we are with technology, there's a lot of contracts we just kind of like click a box and check and move on. But those are contracts. Those are binding agreements where both parties are mutually agreeing to, whatever, give you access to the app, the game, whatever product you're purchasing or something like that. Like, it's a binding agreement. It just gets a little different instead of whenever you're in the space of like every time you buy an app and you click a button that says I agree. When it's one-on-one and it's individual, you're actually kind of signing something. It's still just as binding, but it's even more critical to read those agreements, because once you sign it, you are obligated to do whatever was said in that agreement, and whatever rights that you gave away. You kind of have a very difficult argument to say that I didn't know what was in that agreement. Like, most courts won't, uphold that argument. So.
Right. So we have a foundation of what a contract is. As you mentioned, we enter into contracts, daily, at least once a week in the technology world. Should we be reading those contracts before we agree on an app? Should we be reading those, before we sign up for a new program and it's asking us to agree to something? What are some of the guidelines, parameters that we should know as everyday people just trying to live our lives?
I would say, of course, as a lawyer, you should read all your agreements. But it's actually, and there's a lot of conversation about it because it's actually quite, it's difficult. One little app, as maybe some people don't even know, but when you bought your computer, there was probably an agreement or some sort of paper document somewhere that said terms that you didn't necessarily read. Neither did I necessarily read when I purchased my computer. And so it really is, difficult to say as you go through life, read every document. I think you should. And I do think it's a very important practice to at least look at these documents and really understand. But at the end of the day, it's very difficult. There's a lot of conversation of like, what are you just not going to have a phone? Because all these agreements say something crazy, or say have the similar terms that are kind of just like out there of like we have access to everything, especially when it comes to conversations around privacy, which is a different topic, a different world. But yeah, I think you should definitely make sure to assess the risk when you're doing some of this stuff. So maybe if it's an app that you're going to use and it's like, Snapchat, Instagram, something of that sort, it may, the risks are very low for you for there to be an issue. But if it's something that you're purchasing for your business, or it's something that is critical for your business or critical just in your life and what you need, whether it's like you're hiring somebody, to nanny, or it's a job that you're getting and you're doing those, like these are all agreements. And so those, obviously the risk is a lot higher and the chances of there being an issue is a lot higher as well, that you really want to take the time and read those agreements. And, if you don't understand those, that's where you kind of, seek help.
So for the ones that would be considered low risk, is there opportunities, and from your experience being there in the Valley, for someone, me, Chelsea here in Virginia, can I push back on that agreement, or is it to use my application or decline and you don't have access? Is there any wiggle room in that?
Honestly, no.
I figured, but I wanted to hear from the expert.
Honestly, there's just so many people, accessing those apps or those programs. If you push back, they're probably, and I mean, in most of those agreements, if you go on any type, if you click on your app of any, Instagram, whatever you have, click on it, there's a terms of use, a privacy policy on there. It typically says, because I've drafted hundreds of these, that if you do not agree to these terms, do not use our program. Period. So yeah, they'll probably get a very good laugh as if you email them and push back on the agreement. So I mean, you can try, but odds are they're just going to say, it's not worth it to us. Especially if it's a free item, they're just going to be like,
So
no,
for
thank you.
some of those contracts that are of a higher risk, and so whether it's a influencer working with a brand, the example you use of hiring someone, what in those contracts should we focus on and pay attention on, and when is it appropriate for us to reach out to an attorney? I hope you enjoyed today's conversation with Stephanie. She will be back next week to finish our conversation and answer the question that we left off on. Be sure to share this with a girlfriend or anyone who could learn more about contracts, when you should sign, and when you should hire an attorney. I hope you have an awesome week.